If you want to change the federal pay system or civil service in general, you just might have the chance you've been waiting for. Florida Congressman Dennis Ross wants to give feds the opportunity to weigh in. Ross is chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Subcommittee on the federal workforce. He's developing a website for you to submit your ideas. And Congressman Ross joins us now in our congressional spotlight. Good morning. Welcome back to the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So tell us why you think it is important to get the federal employees to weigh in on this.
Well, first of all, they're obviously an indispensable party. They're a stakeholder in the success of our federal workforce and the productivity of our federal workforce. But more importantly, once we understand what the facts are about the situation we're in with our deficit spending, with the debt that our country has, with the economy the way it is, we need to make sure then that we operate within our means. And who better can do that than those that are out there actually performing the service? So we need their feedback. We want them to be engaged in this process.
Okay, so you're setting up a website, is that right?
Yes, our subcommittee is setting up a website where federal employees can anonymously provide suggestions, criticisms, ideas of how to make their particular job or any particular federal workforce job better, more efficient, more cost-effective.
So the timeline for the website, as feds go looking for it, where will they be able to find it and when?
It'll be on the House.gov website for the subcommittee, the OGR subcommittee on. I don't have the website available with me because it has not been released yet.
Right.
And hopefully within the next 30 days, we're doing that. The important thing is the security of making sure that we keep that everything remains anonymous. We are looking for the very open and honest input, and we know that anonymity is going to be very important in order to achieve that.
So how will you be able to gauge whether these are feds weighing in or somebody else?
Well, we'll run it by those particular workers or those employees that deal in that particular area. This is an amazing workforce that we have out here. The largest workforce the federal government has ever had, 2.15 million people in the workforce. Who knows the job better than them? You know, the guy or the woman who is working hard and carrying somebody through that's not performing as well. These are things that, they might have a way of suggesting that we take care of that, whether it be through incentive-based pay, whether it be through, performance criteria, to meet in terms of outcomes. We don't know, but the private sector is a lot different from the public sector. There's no question about that. And there are a lot of studies in the private sector as to productivity, how do you do performance and things like that. But we have only one federal government. And so who better to, again, address this than those that are already in the system? And that's why it's a unique approach, but I think it's a necessary approach because all the stakeholders have to be engaged in this.
I understand that it's still under development, so some of your answers you might have to work around a little bit. But let's sort of walk me through how this is going to work. Let's just say, for example, the website's up and running. Let's go to an imaginary place and then It's up. I'm a federal worker and I go to it. Do you pose a problem and ask me how to solve it? What's that back and forth going to be like?
Yeah, there will be some suggestions on there as to, what do you think of the disciplinary procedures in place for the federal workforce? What do you think of the Federal Employee Compensation Act, the Office of Workers' Compensation? Do you have any suggestions that might make it better? In regards to any particular job that the federal government performs or service that the federal government performs, what would you suggest would make it better? So it's going to be a very broad brush approach. And not to the extent where one would say, oh, my gosh, the only person that could answer this, they'll know who it is. That's not intended at all. We want it to be a broad brush approach so that we can get ideas. I think what we're going to find is that a lot of people are going to be painfully honest with their performance and how well they've been doing and how well somebody else has not been doing and how we can correct that. Efficiencies in any human resource organization is absolutely crucial. But when we're dealing with, again, the federal government, which there is only one federal government, identifying those deficiencies and making sure that we're recognizing them and incentivizing them is very difficult. And that's, again, why we need to make sure that we've got the input from the federal workforce.
We're talking with Florida Congressman Dennis Ross, chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Subcommittee on the Federal Workforce. And we're learning more about this website that's going to be up and running soon. So once you have all of these suggestions, first of all, let me ask the timeline for the suggestions. Is there a cutoff point?
Not at this point. No, there is not.
Okay. And then when you have all the suggestions, what happens then? Are you yourself going to be able to go through them with the rest of the subcommittee?
Yes, that's our intent. We would like to have a subcommittee focused specifically on these suggestions. We want to be able to take these and implement them into some form of legislation that allows us to reform the federal workforce procedures. Again, this may be so far as to reform the general schedule. There are so many factors out there that we've got to consider that quite frankly, we need to get under control.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you had for instance, the type of problem that you might pose.
Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. But for example, let's just ask, what do you think about the 1-year disciplinary or probationary period for federal employees? Well, some may like it. Some may think it's the best thing. That after that, they've got they're got a career for life. But there are some that may realize that it also protects those that aren't performing well, and there's no way to address the poor performer and to make them better performing. So we will probably do some what if, some hypothetical questions and ask how you would handle it. We want to engage the user. And I think we'll do it in such a fashion that unless you are really part of the federal workforce, we won't be able to credibly respond to it.
And I wanted to ask, as we wrap it up, get your thoughts on the hearing that you held about federal pay. You and I talked about that before the hearing. I just wanted to touch base with you on the outcome of that and where things are going to go from there.
Well, it's interesting because if you look at the data out there, what you find is one thing for sure is that the attrition rate in the federal government is very low. It's 1.15% annually attrition rate, which compared to the private sector is phenomenally low. So you've got a good sense of job security. But you also have, the issue of benefits that the federal government has been providing that takes it a little bit greater than the private sector. But again, more importantly, I think that what you look at when you're looking at what resulted from our hearing was that from a systemic point of view, those in the federal workforce have got a good position, have got good benefits, but then again, those that are performing well are rewarded no greater than those that are performing poorly. And that, to me, is something that needs to be addressed. That those that are performing well need to be rewarded, based on performance, that those that are performing poorly need to be dealt with differently. And I think that's where you start creating a greater efficiency, effectiveness, and I think a greater morale within the federal workforce.
Florida Congressman Dennis Ross, chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Subcommittee on the Federal Workforce.